All right. Well, it looks like we're finally live. If you heard Lesley and I talking, we were talking about Hawaii. I'm wearing my Hawaii shirt today. Got to bring some island vibe. I know we're all at home. And so I had to bring some of Hawaii to you because it's amazing. So we're really glad you guys are here. And we want to hear from you. What do you want to learn in today's webinar? So today's webinar, we have a plan. We're going to talk through how to hire an ISA. What are some traits you're looking for? What should you never do? What should you make sure you do? Things like that. And I'm going to introduce our guest in just a second. But while we're doing that, type in the box. I would love to know, one, where you're located. Two, what's your role on the team? So are you the rainmaker? Are you the ISA? Just what's your role? And then number three, what do you most want to get out of today's webinar? So while you guys do that, we'll introduce ourselves. So I'm Anna Krueger. I am a MAPS coach with Keller Williams, and I coach agents and ISAs. My sweet spot is lead generation, lead conversion. And that's why I partner a lot with ISAs. And so today's webinar is going to be all about how do you hire an ISA, how do you train them, and then how do you keep them around? Because I think we all know, if we're honest, this is a role that a lot of people are still figuring out. And you find somebody and then they leave, and then we find somebody and we leave, and we want to get them to stay if they're the right person. So we'll talk through that today. So Lesley is actually a dear friend of mine. We do work in real estate together, but Lesley is one of my favorite people on the planet. And Lesley, I'll let you introduce yourself and then I'll add some comments. So tell us where you are, what you do, and about your team.
Awesome. Anna, thank you so much for having me. It's like the best to see your smiling face. I wish you were here in Atlanta. Okay, so who am I? I'm Lesley Peters from Atlanta, Georgia. Woo! Actually, my husband and I lead a team of 15, and we're pretty much balanced. We're 50% operations and 50% sales. I've been in the business for 14 years, made our first ISA hire about 3 years ago, and have always been about 80% repeat and referral business. So really heavy database business. In fact, we travel across the country for Keller Williams and teach a 36 touch class. So that's always been the heart of our business. So I've learned so much about the ISA role, Anna, just in the past 3 years.
Yeah, I can't believe that was 3 years ago. In some ways, it feels like it was yesterday. I can't believe that was 3 years ago. Holy cow. So, and I just want to add, one reason I invited Lesley onto this webinar is she is one of the top agents in the country. She didn't say that, but I'll say it for her. She's in Gary's mastermind group. She's been on stage at Mega Camp. She's spoken at Family Reunion. She's truly a gem of a person. And what I love is it doesn't go to her head. I perceive you as very humble and very community service oriented. And that's one reason I love our team. So if you have referrals for Atlanta, Georgia, I recommend Lesley. And one reason I say that is they're very focused on serving their database. They're always doing fun client events, things like that. So Lesley is an awesome resource in Atlanta if you need one. So let's jump into content, and I'm going to be watching the chat box as you go. But Lesley, let's start with, how did you know that it was time to hire an ISA? That's a common question. What are the signs that you might be losing money because of lead gen lack? And how do you know it's time to hire somebody?
Yeah, so we, about 4 years ago, we dove into internet leads, and we had never done that before. And it was honestly a fail forward moment. So we're diving into internet leads, and our agents have always been so accustomed to the warm database leads, the like, come and list me, right? Or the buyer that reaches out that is not interviewing anyone else and they're ready to buy, right? And so our agents were really, honestly, a little spoiled. So we jump into online lead conversion, and we find that they're really struggling with keeping up with number one, with the conversion, and number two, keeping up with all of the lead flow. And so we look up and we have leads that have only been touched once. And I mean, we feel like we're just throwing money down the drain. And we wanted to keep our agents in their strength zone because that's in front of people, right? That's converting that client. That's that consultation, that's showing property. And so we said, we have got to do something different. We're looking to all of our friends across the US, like Caro and just all these teams across the US that have amazing ISA teams. And there was a lot of fear there because we were so database heavy and we had never really called for sell by owners or expired before. And we knew we had to do something different to keep going, because at some point we all tap out of our database, right?
Yeah.
Like our database right now is 2,000 Mets. Well, to be honest, 1,300 of those are my husband who runs the team with me and me. Like those are our Mets. And for us to continue growing that, we just can't grow that to the extent to keep up with a growing real estate team. So it's, how do we start to build an ISA team, and what does that look like? And honestly, I mean, Anna, you remember this well, because I mean, I called you and I said, I know nothing, and we have to do this to go to the next level.
Yeah.
And I need you to coach me for 6 months while I understand what to hire, what to look for, and how to onboard them.
Yep. And excuse me, I'm getting all choked up over here, Lesley, as you're talking. I'm going to say it's the pollen, not COVID. But yeah. And one thing I want to add, because you said it so eloquently and people might have missed it because then we kept going. So everybody write this down if you're at home. Is one way that you can know it's time to hire an ISA is you're not doing the follow-up at this cadence. And here's the cadence that we know earns a 90% contact ratio. So when you call a new lead, whether it be a new FSBO, whether it be a new expired, a new inbound lead, we want to call them at least 6 times in 6 to 10 days, 10 days max, ideally 6. And I heard you say, Lesley, you're calling new leads once. Well, what we know is if you call a new lead 6 times in that window of 6 to 10 days, you get a 90% contact ratio. So what happens is a lot of teams have inbound leads, and then because they're overloaded, they call all the leads once or twice and it feels good. We got to everybody, but it's the consistency in the calling that you actually convert. So all of you listening, you might have that pit in your stomach right now of, I just realized that's what I'm doing. I'm only calling them once or twice. And it literally, I heard my coach said this once to me. I'm just grabbing a random piece of paper, but he said, it's literally like, here's money that you paid for a lead. Just do this and throw it over your shoulder, because we're not actually getting to the person. We just added them to our database, but we didn't actually contact them. So that could be a sign it's time to hire an ISA, which you alluded to. And I just wanted to spell that out a little bit further. So you mentioned mindset. So what were some of the fears or concerns you had to overcome in order to hire this person?
Yeah. Oh, so many fears. I am a recovering perfectionist.
Me too, girl.
So, oh my God. I love to do things the right way. And I felt like I just did not know what I didn't know about converting cold leads or calling FSBOs and expireds, because we had always, I mean, our business was almost 100% just database business, right? And so I had this fear of like, how can I hire someone and teach someone to do this when I've never done this myself?
Yeah.
And what am I looking for in this person? So there was just all of these fears. And I finally said, like, I need accountability around this.
Yeah.
And it's going to require like someone other than Andy, my husband, right, who's running the team with me. Like, it's going to require an outside person. And so that's when I said, you know what? We believe in coaching fully. I mean, we're already coached on our production team. I need to go hire an ISA specific coach that can truly like hold me accountable to hiring. And Anna, at one point you said like, we just got to do this, because it had been like 4 months or something. And I had been interviewing tons of people. And I even remember I was in the car on a coaching call, which is a total no-no. We had an appointment at one of our offices, and I'm in the car with you. And I can remember where I was on Georgia 400 when you said, okay, like, we've got to put perfectionism aside and we've just got to make this hire.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Right. Well, and I remember too, part of the security in that is we put people on a 30, 60, 90 plan, which if you're on this call and you don't know what that is, it's really the continuation of the interview process. So we hire someone, they're still in the interview process because now they have 30-day goals, they have 60-day goals and 90-day goals. So it provides a level of protection, because if they don't work out or they don't hit those metrics, then they're off the team. Right. So it for those of you that are resonating right now and saying, I totally get the perfectionism thing, that's part of why we have 30, 60, 90. It can protect you.
And I love that, because when we think, oh my goodness, like I'm hiring someone and I'm thinking of this huge annual salary, we
Right.
shouldn't think like that. We should think of this in chunks of months. Like if it's, I don't even know. I mean, is it $3,000? Whatever it is, like think of, okay, I'm just hiring them in monthly increments of that annual salary. Don't think like the entire annual salary. Because
Right.
that, I think, puts a lot of fear in us that
Right.
we're not ready to hire that person.
Right. Because the thing is, if they're not producing for you, you let them go at the 30 days or the 60 days or the 90 days. And otherwise they're producing, in which case they're going to earn their salary for you. So I want to mention this real quick, and we'll come back to it at the end. But Lesley was talking about how she hired me, and hired a MAPS coach, which happened to be me, but we worked together to help her hire. So I have good news for you guys, because she did that through Mastery, a Mastery contract. And some of you might say, I'm not looking to do a Mastery contract right now, but I'd really love to have help in hiring an ISA. So we have seen this a lot. And so we actually just created a class, and it's coming from all the questions we get all the time. How do I hire this person? How do I train them? How do I keep them around? And guys, there's a little bit on hiring. It's about a class and a half, so about an hour and a half on hiring. But the rest of the course is, how do you train them? How do you script with them? How do you keep them motivated? What are you tracking? What should you be expecting as far as what's a reasonable result? I hear a lot of team owners say, I don't know if I'm being unreasonable with my expectation of this person. So what's a good goal? So all of that's going to be covered in this class. So go to isamapscoaching.com. and you'll see this banner pop up. It starts Tuesday, so less than a week, or you could click on Rainmaker Program. But what it is, it's a 5-week class, and we give you the best of the best for 5 weeks, and it's $199. So it's a much more accessible program than 4 months of coaching like Lesley and I went through to make this hire. So that's available to you, and we'll talk more about that at the end. But we want you to know that resource is there. We're going to give you as much as we can in 30 minutes, and it's not enough time to cover all the stuff we got to cover to help you do this right. So we'll do the best we can. So another thing, Lesley, is a lot of people wonder, what am I looking for? What are the traits? And you found a fantastic ISA as your first hire. So why don't you tell everyone what you looked for, how did you identify them, and what that process looked like for you? And then we'll transition into how to retain an ISA.
Yeah, absolutely. So I posted an ad for an ISA and was getting tons of applicants. And I'm going to be honest, I did not hire the ISA, the first ISA, until about 450 applicants, because I learned a lot during that time period. I was listening to other teams across the country and how much the base salary was that they were offering. And I was kind of just ripping off and duplicating what other people were doing. And 3 months in, I still hadn't found the right person for the team. And literally, it dawned on me, why am I not looking at other industries in sales, like telemarketing, inside sales agents, outside sales agents, to see what they're paying in the Atlanta market? And then I need to be able to compete with that salary. And the minute that I changed the salary and increased it to compete with those other inside sales telemarketing positions in our market, I started attracting really amazing applicants. And what I've found personally is you really want an ISA that is trained in sales. Like, having sales skills is so important, because if they come to you with the knowledge of either knocking on doors or making phone calls before, you are just going to be that much further down the road.
Yeah.
We've had both, actually. We've had ISAs on our team that did not come with sales experience, and they were just real estate agents that was their only sales experience, was just being a real estate agent. And I have not found the success there that I've actually found with trained sales skills. Like, people, for instance, our first ISA came from Cutco, and Cutco has an amazing training program. And so he came with the knowledge, and I didn't really have to train him so much because he needs sales skills. So I just introduced him to our script, and it was immediately up and running. And then it's kind of, we were talking before about, how do you know you need an ISA? Well, when you hire your first one, and in the first week they're booking like 5 to 10 appointments, and they come to you and they say, I've called 10 people that already bought within the last year or already sold their house within the last year. It's like the pit in the stomach feeling.
Yes.
It's like, man, why did I not hire this role a long time ago?
Why did I not hire them a lot sooner? Yeah. And we find that most ISAs, because and we'll get into compensation in a minute, but there's a base pay plus a commission. And we find that they very quickly pay for that base pay, because when they're setting that many appointments that quickly, they're going to then have closings, which help cover the pay that you're giving them. So we'll get in. I see questions in the chat box. How do you pay? And we'll get into that in just a second. But I want to highlight something that Lesley just said. And all of you are in different places in your business, right? And some of you have more time than others. Although right now with the shift, a lot of us probably have less time. But what we know is you could hire someone that doesn't have the sales experience and train them and get them to be where you want them to be. But what I find from coaching the role is it usually takes them significantly longer to get to where they're humming, and they're also able to lead a department. I mean, we're talking a year and a half potentially to get that person to the level they need to be to not only perform, but then know how to lead other people in the role. So if you think about it, you're really hiring someone to be the business owner of your lead generation business. When I worked for Haro as his lead ISA, I truly viewed it as Haro has a real estate business and I have a lead generation business that's housed within his business. And just like what Lesley said, I started working for Haro. I had already done inside sales for 10 years when I started working for Haro. And I remember he said, you'll be calling people, you'll be leaving voicemails, you'll be doing this. And I thought, well, that's what I've been doing. This isn't hard. And all I really had to learn was real estate. So you have to look at what's your capacity. If you have a year and a half time that you could ramp someone up, teach them everything yourself, then they could eventually get to where they lead a department. Maybe you do look for an inexperienced person. But if you, and this is most teams that I talk to, they are desperately behind following up with leads, and they need someone that can come in, take ownership, run it, and then eventually hire people. That's where you're going to want someone that already has experience, which is a lead into the next question, because if you want someone with experience, you're going to pay them a little differently than a brand new person. So Lesley, let's talk about that. I see it coming into the chat box. How do you pay an ISA? And then do they need a real estate license? And we'll address that. So go ahead.
So in the state of Georgia, we do, it is required that they have a real estate license. And so we can't outsource to some big lead generation company that's calling our leads. Like, we have to have someone that's licensed. I don't know what it is like in your state. And that can be a challenge when you're looking for someone that has to be licensed. But here's the thing. If they show motivation to go out and get a real estate license, you are learning so much about just them as a person. Because if they're motivated enough to go take a class to become an agent, to get that job, then you're looking at, longer retention. You're looking at someone that's in this to win this, right? Yeah. So that, to me, there's a lot of people that aren't going to apply, but the ones you actually get that apply are good quality candidates for the most part. Yeah. So I fell forward in the beginning. I was offering a $24,000 a year base salary and 5% for every closed transaction that they booked. And what I found is the base for Atlanta, and this is not to say different markets are different, but that base for Atlanta did not, I couldn't attract the top talent because I was competing against Angie's List that was hiring telemarketers, and they were paying $45,000 base. So you really need to do your research and know what your local market's paying. And I don't even want to tell you a specific number because it's so different depending on your market. Yeah. And then I also think that we fell forward a little bit too, because in some ways you've got to have someone that is money motivated, right? You've got to have someone that has skin in the game and is money motivated. And what I mean by that is if you pay too much of a salary that they're comfortable living on, then they are not going to perform as well, and they're not going to make as many dials, and they could get a little lackadaisical in the role. Yeah. And so you have to find that fine balance, right?
Yep. And I want to add to that too. That is a very common challenge we see. I'm thinking of at least 3 teams I'm coaching right now who they're having a challenge with performance because the people are comfortable with the base pay. So it's that balance to make sure it's the way you determine what your base pay rate. I've been talking all day, so hang on a second. The way you determine your base pay is look at comparable jobs in your market and put together a package where the person between base pay and commission can hit at least that or more. So it's competitive, but they're also going to have to work for it because you want that driven person. The other thing I want to say about commission, where I live in South Carolina, I did not have to be licensed to be an ISA. There were a lot of things I couldn't talk about. I still had 86 closings my first year as an unlicensed ISA, but here's the thing. Once I got my license, even though I always considered I had a good work ethic, my brain started thinking significantly more strategically because I thought instead of getting the same pay, because if you're unlicensed, you cannot earn commission. So you're going to limit that person's earning ability if they are not licensed. So that's another reason to get them licensed. And as soon as I started earning commission, my brain kicked into, okay, if I'm going to set 10 appointments this week, why not set 10 appointments at a higher price point so that for the same amount of effort, the team earns more money and I earn more money? Why not focus on a higher price point? And I just found I started thinking a lot differently when commission was part of the package. The other thing is, if they're not, you want a driver. I see questions in the chat box. What's the quality you're looking for? You want someone that is very driven. And I find a lot of driven people are motivated by knowing the harder I work, the more money I can earn. If they're not licensed, there's not really a way you can package their income that they can earn more by their effort, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, Lesley, the way I described that?
Yes. And I love talking about benefits too, because I think so often we as real estate agents don't think about like really running a business and offering benefits to our people. And so for us, like, yes, we're providing health insurance. Yes, we're providing 401k benefits, right? Because I'm in this, I want them to be in with the Peters company for the long haul.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see a question, what's the base pay plus commission formula again? So I'll reiterate that. And then Lesley, let's talk through how do you keep this person around? How do you train them? Things like that. So going back to the formula, because all of you live in different markets with different price points. So 40,000 in one market might make sense for base pay. And in another market, 30,000 might be right. So what you want to do is you want to look online at other roles that are comparable. So what do college recruiters make in your area? What do Verizon sales reps make in your area? What do, Lesley, help me think, but what are some other?
Angie's list in Atlanta is a big one. Okay. Yeah. I'm trying to think who else.
And but what you want to do is you want to position the salary plus commission that it's comparable to at least that. So example, if 60,000 is what a typical telemarketer might make in your area with all the benefits and everything, you want to present the package of how could you work for me, and through your base pay plus we think you could reasonably have this many closings this year, which would be this much commission. That's at least 60,000 plus. So you're figuring out how do we put together a package that's not quite that top amount, but they easily see how I could earn at least that or more through my effort. Because we don't want to overpay them so that they're comfortable and don't hustle, but we want to pay them enough that they're motivated to work with us. And guys, this is part of why that class was created, because in the class we talk through when we break down how do you determine how many closings they need to bring you to pay for themselves. That's too complex to get into this short webinar right now, but we dive a lot deeper in this in that class that starts next week. Okay, so why don't you tell us, Lesley, how did you train them? What did you do to retain ISAs? Give us some tips and then we'll close out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Anna, you were instrumental in this for me. I mean, like I told you guys before, like I had never called a FSBO. I had never called an expired. I was not the person that was following up with leads. And so I was a lost puppy, and Anna really helped me develop scripts and the MAPS ISA group coaching program. I have always had our ISAs in that MAPS ISA group coaching program. So they're getting accountability, and I was getting your coaching. So here are the scripts. I loved it too, Anna, because you gave me a plan and you said, when you hire someone, you want to start them off with the leads that you are really not calling, right? The ones that you just have not paid a lot of attention to, and let them practice, right? Let them really practice. Although you don't want them to go 30 days without booking an appointment. You don't want them to go a week without booking an appointment. So for us, and I love doing this, when an agent referral comes in, we get a ton of agent referrals across the country. If I have an ISA that's newer and I want to just motivate them, I'm going to throw them an easy agent referral to convert, right? And and let them feel success early on. So I think it's having a plan of what leads they're starting out on. And I wholly believe in getting them on the phone quickly. So they need to be on the phone the first day. And then having a plan of what leads. So for us on our team, our plan is we roll out a new lead source every week. So by the 6th week, they are literally working every lead source that comes into the ISA team. So I think you helped me develop that, and that was awesome. And then having scripts for each of those, and having script and role play. One thing that was great for our agents is actually our agents scripting with our ISA.
Yes. Well, and it builds trust, because as an ISA, and then Lesley, I know you're not currently in the agent role, but you were, there has to be a trust, because as an ISA, say I'm setting up appointments for Lesley, my income is going to be dependent on her ability to close out the lead. But Lesley, as the agent, needs to trust that Anna isn't setting up appointments for her that are just crap, right? Like, that's what it is. So I want to respect Lesley's time and not send her on all these appointments that don't make sense. So there has to be a trust and a culture between agents and ISAs for that to really meld well. So something that Lesley said I want to point out is there's a method in how you roll out. A lot of ISAs tell me, I started on my team owner gave me like 12 scripts and I'm overwhelmed and I don't know where to start. And we find a lot more success by one at a time and test them out. So what I mean by that is, say that Lesley is the ISA I'm training. I would say, great, Lesley, here's your first script, week 1. It is my deepest desire to give you another lead source. The way you earn that lead source is to perform the script for me without having to read it word for word, with a high degree of comfortableness, and then I'll give you the next opportunity. And that motivates them to get that script down. And only when they have that down do you then give them the next lead source. Okay, well, answer one more question in the chat box. How do you know if you should hire within or without, basically? But before we do, I do want to touch on the program. So, and I'm about to make an announcement that nobody knows yet. I have not announced it publicly. Not even Lesley knows this. So we do have the Rainmaker program starting, August, April 21st, which is 6 days from now. So it'll be Tuesday, April 21st. It's $199. It's 5 weeks. And we go through 5 weeks of how do you hire someone? How do you train them? So once they're within the team, what are some ideas for you how to train them? What should they be tracking? How do you track that? What's reasonable? I think a lot of team owners come to me and they say, I don't know if I'm being unreasonable and I'm nervous that I might be expecting too much or too little. So how do I know? So we actually go through an activity to help you determine on your team, what's the minimum that they must bring in to pay for themselves and get you the ROI that you're looking for. We also go over how do you help the culture between the ISA and the agents, because if that's broken, it's not going to work. So how do we create a strong culture? So that starts on April 21st. There's a link in the chat box about how to sign up for that. But here's the thing I haven't told anyone yet. I'm announcing it for the first time. So we have rewritten the ISA MAPS coaching program. Right now, it's $800 a month, and the new program will be $199 a month, and it's going to start in June. So we set this up so that you can take the How to Hire, Train, and Retain an ISA coaching program. Then there's a week break. Hopefully you've made your hire. And then the first week of June, we're starting for a program for ISAs. It's going to be awesome. So we wanted to make it more accessible, especially with what's going on with the shift right now, which is why it's a different price and we've tweaked the program to make it a lot better. So I'm really excited. I think that will be great. But step one is get the right person, and that's what's starting next week. Okay, last question. How do you know if we should hire basically internally or externally? So should we hire an ISA directly or should we hire a company? I have an opinion on that, but Lesley, what's your take? And then I'll share my opinion.
I wholeheartedly believe in keeping the team culture and having someone in our office.
Yeah.
I truly do. I love having a full-time employee because you're controlling hours and standards, and they're my representation when any call comes in to the Peters company. If our phone rings, the ISA is the first person that picks it up. And I want that person to be an excellent, what is the word I'm looking for? Just an excellent, why am I going blank?
Yeah.
Ambassador of the Peters company. Anna, I'm like you, like my 10th Zoom call of the day and my brain is not keeping up with my mouth.
Yeah.
So you want an excellent ambassador for your team, and you can control that more if you have the ISA in-house and they're completely devoted to you, right? Retention and just you control the script. I'm a big fan in my ISA, a big fan of our ISAs calling our database. And when they're calling our database and then they get to meet them at the event, like that's amazing. Like they put a face with that name and that person is truly a part of our team. Can you tell I'm biased in that?
Yeah, me too. I feel very passionate about it. And here's the thing. I think that if you hire a company to do the calls for you, it can be a good short-term solution, primarily for very cold calls, like they're circle calling a neighborhood, something like that. I've actually coached ISAs that are from a company working with a team that I coach. And I just find that often they don't convert the same way. And here's why. I actually have been a virtual ISA and an in-house ISA. Before real estate, I used to lead convert for a team in Virginia, and I live in South Carolina. And then once I got in real estate, I was an in-house ISA. And here's the thing that's the big difference. Your ISA is selling you. And that might sound funny, but that's the idea. I'm basically selling the idea of working with people. You're going to love Tim. You're going to love Haro. You're going to love Lesley. Well, if I'm actually working with you in person right now on Zoom, because we're all at home, but if I'm actually working with you, I get to hear your wins in the team meeting. I get to hear Lesley say, I just won a multiple offer against 6 people yesterday. So now when I'm on the phone later today and I have a lead that's kind of on the fence, first of all, I know Lesley, I love her. I'm going to feel much more compelled to say, you're going to love working with Lesley. In fact, just yesterday, she won a multiple offer against 6 people. Trust me, she's the one you want to be with. If I am remote from my team, I don't get to know all that stuff, right? And I also find that agents don't trust me as much. When I was a remote ISA for that team in Virginia, we had a decent relationship. It worked okay, but there was definitely not the camaraderie. They didn't know how I operated. I didn't really know how they operated. And there wasn't that confidence. Once I became an in-house ISA, I truly had a strong conviction that Haro was the best listing agent in town, and you would be crazy to work with anyone else. And that came from working with him. It came from lead generating with him. It came from watching him conduct appointments. And that's what you lose when they're a remote ISA. So I think it can be a temporary solution for just if you need some circle calls done or something while you're working on the hire. But I'm with Lesley. I deeply, strongly, adamantly believe that in-house is significantly better than hiring a virtual company for that. All right, we're going to let you guys go. We're 5 over and we want to respect your time. But Lesley, I've had so much fun hanging out with you today. I'm just going to invite you on more webinars because I miss hanging out with you. So we're just going to have to do this more often.
Me too. Thank you so much, Anna, for having me. Yes. I love you, girl.
I love you too. And thank you for sharing your time. I know a lot of people benefited from your experience. So thank you so much for being real with us today and sharing all that.
Y'all have a great afternoon.
All right. Bye, everybody. Oh, and isamapscoaching.com. isamapscoaching.com. That's the website to learn more about the class. All right. Bye, guys.